Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red podcast. I'm Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com, and with me, as always, is my co host, Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org. It's been a little bit since we've recorded an episode. I've had to be out of town on some business stuff last week. It was covering some state wrestling tournaments. But we're back, and we got some exciting. It was an exciting weekend for the Huskers. Another big win. I believe it was maybe the biggest rally in Nebraska basketball history. They came back from 17 points down. Keisei Tominaga, rallied them, and a big win for Fred Hoiberg. The Huskers are 12-14 now, but it really seems like this win is just more than another win. And Danny, what's your reaction to beating another team in the Big Ten that Nebraska struggled against in recent years?
Well, I think when you look at who contributed, Blaze Cada, Sam Hoiberg, those guys, Lawrence, we've complained, or I've at least complained, you're more neutral than I am, about the development of some of the younger players in the program and lack thereof. Well, now with the injuries, we are really starting to see them, find their groove and play well. I thought Blaze Cada did a good job of, fighting for loose balls and getting rebounds and maximizing his minutes. I think that's a common theme that we're seeing with a lot of these players that are stepping up. They're maximizing their minutes and they're making positive contributions on the floor. I said this Saturday, um, I'm always a little leery when the coach's son gets to play because of nepotism and, things like that. But Sam Hoiberg can ball. He can play well and, he has a lot of energy and he's been a pleasant surprise, not just Saturday, but in the last couple games overall. So I think this win against Wisconsin kind of really showed that this team still has that identity of toughness and grit, and it's spread down all the way to the bench players, and that's something that I think will be important for the stretch run. And I think it's good that Fred has finally found a team that has identity with it, and not just a bunch of players playing as one.
Yeah, definitely. But you're right. I mean, the development of some of these younger guys has been key. I mean, Tominaga's taken a huge step, and I'm not, he really played well over the summer with the national team, but his development has been huge. But yeah, Keita, has played really well. Lawrence really impressed me. 11 points, 4 rebounds. Made another three, and only one turnover. So he's been a guy as a freshman that I think has played really well. And it's just all of it's kind of coming together. It's impressive to me that we talked a couple weeks ago and we're like, man, this team could lose out, and they've won 2 games since then. And so I'm not saying that it's cutting down the Nets time or anything, but this was a pretty significant win. I think it was pretty significant when President Ted Carter came out with a strong statement and said this was the best win of the season for Fred Hoiberg. So like it or not, I 100% think Fred Hoiberg's coming back next season.
Yeah, we talked about, unless he had a complete slide, he wouldn't be back. But I think this all guarantees, his job for next year. And you have to wonder. I hate to play the what if game, but if Juan Gary and Emmanuel Bandamel were still healthy, I wonder how far this team could go. But I think it just speaks to. We talked a little bit about it earlier in the season. Fred had to find a group of players and an identity to play Big Ten basketball, and he's definitely found it. That identity is toughness, fight, physicality, and a bunch of players who bring their proverbial lunch pail to the floor every time and work really hard and grind out wins and die for loose balls. I mean, it's really fun to see, and it's fun to see everybody play for each other and not just hero ball and isolation basketball as we have seen in years past.
Yeah, and I should say, I mean, there's still 5 games left. So if they lose their
Yeah.
last 6 games, I mean, maybe that would be, but I just don't think they're going to. They've got 3 games at home. I know they play at Iowa. I'm blanking on their next game. Let me pull up the schedule here. I'm pretty sure it's on the road at Rutgers. Yeah, so that's gonna be a really tough game. I mean, that's probably the toughest game left on the schedule. But then you got Maryland coming to Nebraska, Minnesota, and Michigan State. Those are all 3 winnable games, and you've already beat Iowa. I mean, obviously it's going to be tough to do there, but this team does have a chance to, maybe an outside chance of making the NIT or whatever. I mean, I know that's probably still a long shot with that schedule. I mean, you're going to have to, win at least 3 games in the regular season and then a game or two in the Big Ten tournament, but at least gives, fans something to cheer for. And it's just we one thing I remember, talking about, as a goal for this season was just that Nebraska needed to get back to a point where it was really, the vault wasn't a guaranteed win, and it wasn't that way in previous years. And I think they've got back to that point where it's tough to go win a basketball game at Nebraska, and that's a huge step forward. They need to continue that progress next year, but I feel like that there's definitely been some measurable progress, with this team. They've won, more overall games. They've won more Big Ten games, and they're beating some pretty good teams. So, I think that Fred's done enough at this point, as long as the bottom doesn't fall out, to come back at least for one more year.
Yeah, and quite honestly, this is a very easy team to root for. I mean, you got Kisi Tominaga. How can you not love the guy?
Yeah.
Just absolutely loving basketball and making 3 pointers like a Nebraska Steph Curry in the process. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are really fun to root for, and I think it all goes back to, and I'll say this, I know I've said this a lot already, but they're playing for each other. They're playing team basketball, and you can tell that they want to play for each other. I mean, and there's something to be said about that. I mean, me personally, I've loved watching Sam Griesel play. You can tell he really wants to win every single time he steps on the floor, and I'm sad that we only have him for one season. But he's definitely, I see him on Twitter, interacting with fans and younger fans and things like that, and taking pictures with them and stuff. So all that matters, and I think this is a team that really cares and has a good group of guys, and is fun to root for. When you have that combination, fans will show up and make your home court a tough place to play.
It's also, I think, with Greasel a reminder that you don't have to have top 100 talent to win in the Big Ten. You need to be able to develop players and get the right kind of guys. But he could have been here for, this could have been his fourth year at Nebraska. And so
I
there's been,
wish.
yeah, there's been some recruiting mistakes, I think, obviously, and but yeah, Griesel's been a great player, but there definitely is going to be some fun pieces back next year. I mean, Tominaga, they need to get this guy an NIL deal, stat like a fat one, and I think he's got a chance to be a really popular player. He already is. He's only got 1 year left though, and man, watching him these last couple of weeks, I definitely feel like if he wanted to go play pro ball in Japan or Europe or whatever, like he probably would have that opportunity. So hopefully Nebraska's aware of that, and at least get some, because I just get an NIL deal for the kid and make sure he's back next year like 100%, because the way he's played over the last few weeks, I mean, this is like his third or fourth 20-point game out of probably, I'm not looking at the stats right now, but he's had quite a few. I mean, even in the game they lost to Michigan, I mean, he went off for a bunch of 3-pointers. So I mean, he's really carried this offense, and I definitely, they need to see him come back. It seems like he's a guy that they can kind of feature this offense around. I mean, I know they need other pieces, but to kind of create shots. But the thing I love about Casey is not only is he a guy who can shoot the ball really well, but he's really active. He's a really high IQ player, so he scores a lot on cuts, off screens. He's really active with the basketball, and he actually does a pretty good job of finishing around the hoops. So I mean, he definitely, in my opinion, has a future playing professional basketball somewhere. And I'm just, I really want them to his last year to be next year. I mean, I just feel like if you kind of hype this up, and you could have a lot of you could have a lot of Nebraska basketball fans kind of having like Kaisei fever going into next season.
Absolutely, and he also provides a nice complement to this year, especially the inside game of Derek Walker and Griesel's ability to drive to the rim. It spreads out the floor a little bit, and teams are starting to notice Tominaga being a sniper. So I hope he comes back. He's a fun guy to root for. And I think he has a little over 40% 3-point field goal percentage. So that's very good, and I just think that he could definitely be like you said, I think he would be a great fit for, the Europe game especially, but if he comes back, then that gives me reason to be hopeful for next season. I mean, like I've said before and like you've said before as well, the problem for Fred isn't recruiting. It's kind of getting the pieces to mesh together, and maybe I mean, maybe this is the year that he's finally figured out that you don't necessarily need four-star talent and things like that, but pieces that fit together. So I'll be interested to see what the recruiting strategy is from here on out.
Yeah, so just well, I will be interested to see too. Although I really like Eli Rice in the 2023 class. I know they had another kid that was committed that decommitted, but Eli
Chase
Rice,
Clemens, I believe his name was.
Yeah, but Eli Rice is at IMG. He should have been he would this like this would have been his freshman year, so he took like a prep year at IMG. So I feel like he's going to be pretty ready to play. And he when he reclassified to the 2023 class, I mean I know he got a 3-star, so he's like a top 150 or 200 recruit. But Tominaga, man, his numbers are insane. Yeah, 40% 3-point percentage, which is really good. And so he definitely, obviously, he's going to want to play in the NBA. That's not something he's going to rule out. So I mean, Nebraska's going to give him the best chance to do that. But I'm just saying, he is. I'm sure he'll come back, but just put some money in the kid's pocket. Like he
Mm.
deserves it. And I mean, but he started 8 games this year and he's averaging 12 points a game. So I mean, he's playing 23 minutes and he's averaging 12 points a game. So he needs to get more minutes, which he obviously has been these last, few games. I still want to see, Wilcher still needs to, hit some more shots. Obviously, he only played like 10 minutes the other night. So that was kind of interesting. But Denham Dawson did too. I think it's just, kind
Well,
of
I
a
think with
matchup thing.
Wiltshire, I think Wiltshire is honestly, he's so hot and cold that at some points he's a liability on the floor in terms of his shooting. I mean, I hate to say that, but you never know what you're gonna get out of him. So I don't mind the minutes reduction, especially now where they kind of have to go through a pivotal stretch because when he's on, but when he's off, he is very off, and that kind of up and down play certainly won't get you minutes.
No, I'm hoping that he does round into form. But yeah, I mean, Jamarcus Lawrence has taken a lot of his minutes, and he's shooting 37% from deep.
Yeah.
Wilcher's down to 31. But it would be nice to see, for next year, I would be nice to see him kind of round back into form. But yeah, Blaise Keita, has shown some things where maybe he could step in and be, a big guy. He's not ever going to be Derek Walker offensively, but he definitely is a rim protector and a solid
Rebounder,
rebounder.
yep.
And so he's a nice piece. I think him and Breidenbach, I mean, that's kind of a solid combination you could have at that job. I definitely still believe that they're going to need to add another big in the transfer portal, but I think the need is going to be at least. It's not like you have to go find a guy that has to play 35 minutes like Derek Walker. If Nebraska could go find a guy who could play like 15 or 20 minutes, but can just score in the low post, I think that would be enough. I don't think they need a superstar big, because these guys I think can develop pretty well. And I've been impressed with Brian Bach. I mean, he's been up and down, but he's still has kind of bounced back from injuries. This is first year back from that injury, so hopefully he has a better year next year. But I really am excited about what Tominaga could do next year. And then you still probably have to go maybe get another point guard or at least another guard. I'm not sure if Lawrence and Dawson would be able to kind of handle things, so you probably have to go find another transfer portal guard. So probably two guys in the portal, but with Jawan Gary coming back, I mean, he's a surefire starter to me as long as he
Mm.
can play. And then you got Tominaga, and Lawrence has played pretty well. So I mean, I mean, I know that's just three guys, but that's three guys right there: Keita, Dawson, Wiltshire if he decides to come back and can actually make some shots. So I mean, there's some pieces in place that if you could find a couple of good dudes in the transfer portal, like you'll have a pretty solid roster next year.
And it's cool seeing development in real time because we haven't always seen development within the program, and it's cool seeing these guys kind of step up and play well. And I'm very happy for them because we weren't really sure what we were going to get out of some of these guys at the beginning of the year, and now we kind of have a clearer picture. So it only helps the program for the future, and that's why, like you said you're excited for Tominaga. I'm excited to see how the rest of these guys, develop and kind of inch their way permanently into the equation for Nebraska because I think it's a good group of players and I think Fred's done a pretty good job of developing them. Yes, I know injuries were a huge reason why, but you get your minutes when you get your minutes, and a lot of them, like I said at the beginning, have made the most of them.
So it'll be tomorrow night, 6 p.m. I believe. Or yeah, sorry, that's the wrong time. I'm looking at my own mountain time. So it's gonna be, I believe, 5 Central Time. Nebraska, I think, is gonna be taking on or 7, excuse me. Got my times all mixed up here. But anyways, playing Rutgers tomorrow. I mean, I wouldn't get my hopes up. It's really, really hard to win in New Jersey. So I don't think
Mm.
that, we should fault anybody on this team, but I do think they're going to come out and battle. I wouldn't expect them to come out and lay down. And look, I don't think there's anybody on this Nebraska team that, has given up on this season. Obviously, they still have goals. And I mean, so it'll be fun to watch them tomorrow and see how they continue to grow. But if they can win those last 3 home games, man, just about. So I mean, even if you just won the home games, that would get you to 15 wins. And if you lost the other two, you'd be at six. So basically, you'd be 15 and 16 going into the Big Ten tournament. So if you won your first two games, which you're probably going to be in the first four games, so that's not going to be that tough. And then you're probably playing a team that you've maybe already beaten this year. So I mean, Nebraska winning two games at the tournament and getting to 16 and 16 is not like out of the realm of possibility.
No, and I think it would be interesting. I'm excited to see what they do in the Big Ten tournament because I believe it was last year they lost on a missed layup at the buzzer or something. Bryce McGowan's missed a layup or something, so they were close last year. And I'm excited to see what this team could do in the tournament. I'm not expecting hardware or trophies anytime soon, but again, the more experience, especially that these younger guys get, the better it is long term for the program. So, I think anything good this year is gravy, and hopefully they can, you know, make the most of it. And I am excited for the future of the program. It'll be interesting to see what Fred does, and like you said earlier, I think he comes back next year, and I honestly think this Wisconsin win was a big motivating factor in, you know, potentially bringing him back.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what I believe they were underdogs on. I on Sunday, Saturday. So I'm not 100% sure, but they beat Ohio State as an under. So they've won like 4 or 5 games this year as an underdog, even as a home
Creighton,
underdog. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like that. A really smart person told me once that if you're a coach and you want to keep your job, you have to win the games you're supposed to win, and you have to win a few you're not supposed to win. And Fred Hoiberg's done that this year, so I feel like he's done enough, as long as the bottom doesn't totally fall out, to come back.
I'm trying to think. Let's see, the games they weren't supposed to win. Creighton,
I'd
West
say Creighton, Iowa,
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Penn State was favored by like 4 points. I mean, people don't want to call that an upset, but I mean, that team was favored in Lincoln by like 4 points. So, like, if you play that game in Happy Valley, Nebraska's like probably like a 5, 6 point underdog. So, I mean,
I want to say
Wisconsin,
Minnesota too, but not by much. Uh,
well, maybe because they were on the
were
road,
they?
maybe they
Yeah.
were probably like a one, but yeah, because Minnesota's horrible. But still, I mean, so you got I would say almost every Big Ten win but Minnesota has been an upset, and at least in terms of the odds.
Wisconsin always has shooters. I know that just kind of came out of the blue, but Wisconsin always has some form of shooters, and it's kind of it's kind of frustrating. They know how to shoot the three-pointer very well. I still remember watching the 2015 team with Sam Decker and Frank Kaminsky, and they always seem to churn out shooters. And I wish we could do that as well. I mean, we have Kesey, but I wish we could have a couple more three-point shooters. But it's just amazing their consistency that they have because they have always in the time that I've watched them been able to shoot the three-point shot well. It's pretty incredible, actually.
I think it's just that's what they recruit to. It's not like those guys are super high level recruits. They recruit big guys that have that skill and they teach it, and that's how they play in their system. And so
And it works.
yeah, and you got to be able to do. You can find. I mean, you can find guys that shoot. You know what I mean? Like those guys get overlooked in the recruiting process a lot. It's like the one thing that it's just interesting because this game is about putting the ball in the basket, but that's kind of the one thing people seem to forget about. They get caught up in like ball handling and athleticism and size and slam dunking, but some of these guys can't shoot the ball worth a lick. So it is what it is. But yeah, more shooters, and look, Fred's doing a good job. I feel like he's found his kind of sweet spot with Nebraska of how to recruit. And I feel like having a good season this year and having a couple of roles potentially open, where guys can slot in and see how they can kind of fit with the team that's coming up, is going to give them a better chance in the transfer portal too, to add some talent.
Yeah, it gives you the ability to, sell the fact that you can play right away, and that's huge, especially in college basketball. So I'm intrigued to see where the program goes for the future. I think, losing Greasel and Walker next year is going to be huge, and that's not any indication on Fred or any indictment on Fred or the program. I mean, when you lose those two types of players, those are big losses within the program. So I'd love to see if they could get, a pass first point guard like Greasel, because I thought he did a good job of finding his teammates as well as, scoring. There was a nice balance there. So I'd love to see that again. And I'll be interested to see what the roster looks like next year. I think in terms of development and talent, I think they're in they are better set up for next year than they were at the end of the 2021-2022 season last year. So
Yeah.
I definitely think they're in a better spot than where they were a year ago.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Let's switch gears, talk a little bit of recruiting. There's not, kind of a ton of information, but there always is some stuff. We've obviously, we'll start with Dylan Raiola because that's the big thing. And it seems like there's a lot of different, information reporting out there. We know he's going to be taking a visit. I believe is it March 25th or 23rd, something like that.
25th.
25th. And that's shaping up to be a big weekend, according to Sean Callahan of Husker Online. It sounds like there's going to be a number of top targets on campus that weekend. So it's he called it a VIP recruiting weekend. And I'm going to be interested to see if Nebraska really does try to make a strong push then to get Raiola in this class. I don't know if it's going to work. I know he's going to be at Georgia the week before that. There was also Steve Wiltfong from 24/7 Sports. He kind of does his weekly, Wiltfong whip around, and he does a lot of reporting. The last thing that he talked about was that he believed that Raiola was going to be making multiple visits to the LA area, to USC. So and also when talking about, Georgia offered a new quarterback, and he kind of indicated that, Georgia, that doesn't have any really impact on Rail. I mean, it might a little bit, but Georgia already has a quarterback committed in this class. So they're definitely taking two quarterbacks. So, I don't think it's, anything, to read into about, their confidence with Raiola or whatever. But it does sound like, to me at least, that there are three teams that have really started to emerge: USC, Georgia, and Nebraska. And I'm thinking right now he's going to probably want to take multiple visits to all those places. So personally, I would be surprised if he makes a decision in March. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think it would kind of take me off guard as well. And you mentioned we talked about this a little bit before the show, the domino effect that Rayola could have if he committed here. And you know, Aaron Hampton, the wide receiver, had Nebraska in his top 7. I know top 7 is top 7. It's not top 5 or top 3, but I mean the fact that we were on, a list with Alabama, I mean that's always a win for me. And Hampton is a dynamic playmaker that can stretch the field. He has tremendous speed, can make things happen after the catch. So I think if Rayola comes here and commits here, we'll see a domino effect. And I think if we land Rayola, then Hampton will come too, because they've been tweeting at each other for a while now. So I'm just curious to see how this all plays out, because I think the impact of Dylan Rayola coming here would be absolutely massive in terms of other players coming here as well.
Yeah, I think Hampton's a good name to bring up. And, I think Alabama's obviously the biggest threat right now. He took a visit there. He got some crystal ball projections and stuff. But there's definitely been, some communication. I mean, even before he took that visit, he tweeted some things at Dylan Raiola, and he tweeted some stuff after Matt Rule's press conference. He's from Texas. He was committed to Texas. So I feel like Nebraska obviously is going to have a good chance. He talked about, with Sean Callahan reported this on this morning at Husker Online, that Hampton said about Nebraska, if any school deserves to get multiple visits, it's Nebraska. So I feel like they're doing a good job putting the work in with him. They've got the connections out of Texas. So let's look at his top 7, right? It's Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, where he already decommitted, Oregon, and Michigan and LSU. So honestly, when I look at that list, and I feel Nebraska's in the upper range of that top 7, then I feel like Nebraska is in a better spot than probably Texas, because he already left that. It just seems. I think he just probably put him on there because he's from Texas. And then I feel like Nebraska's in a better spot than Oregon and Michigan, Oklahoma. I feel like right now it's a Nebraska Alabama battle for this thing. And so yeah, if they get Dylan Raiola, they're probably going to get Aaron Hampton too. And even if they don't get Dylan Raiola, I mean, it's not like Alabama's got a ton of dudes up on that receiver board that they're going to get. And Nebraska doesn't have, they've got maybe one guy, in Malachi Coleman, who's like Aaron Hampton, but, he's a top 60 player. So it'll be interesting to see if those Texas ties win out. But I feel like that Nebraska's going to have a really good opportunity with this kid. And that's regardless of what happens with Dylan Raiola.
Battling with Nick Saban is like battling the final boss in a video game. So if it comes down to us in Alabama, it's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be, tough to get him. just because it's Alabama. I mean, they don't even have to have a recruiting pitch. You can just walk into Nick Saban's house and you see all the trophies and you're like, damn, I want to go here. So, I mean, like you said, I mean, I feel confident about where Nebraska stands for sure. I just, I always worry about Alabama because they don't have to sell much in terms of a recruiting pitch these days.
Yeah, I mean Alabama's the one that's always difficult, and Georgia is the other. Honestly, those are probably the two
Yeah.
teams that you don't want to have to be going up, in battles against, on the recruiting trail. Ohio State's the other one I would say. So those are probably like the top three schools. I mean, I know you've got a lot of other, teams like Miami, obviously, Florida, Texas A&M, USC. They're all kind of throwing money around and getting guys signed to their classes. So honestly, Nebraska's going to need to do that. The 1890 initiative or whatever, the NIL needs to get ramped up a little bit. And I know Matt Rule's not doesn't. We're not going to be like Texas A&M or doing the pay for play thing. And I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing for your locker room. I don't think it's great if you have a bunch of veteran players who've been busting their hump for the program, and now a freshman who comes in and hasn't done a thing makes more money than him on an NIL deal. But we see that in the NFL all the time, or we used to. We don't really see it anymore with the way that the rookie cap has kind of been structured. But I do think they need to ramp that up a little bit more. And I mean, that would help with the basketball transfer portal too. And, getting some big time talents in here, especially because in basketball, there's not as many, guys like available as there are in football. So I'll be interested to see how that kind of plays out and who else kind of starts being, established as some top targets in this 2024 class. There's been a lot of offers, and I'll be interested to see who starts coming in for visits here over, in March and over this summer. And I think that'll kind of tell us a lot about where they stand on the board.
The fact that we're on lists with the likes of Alabama, Oklahoma, I mean, Texas, even though in this case Hampton decommitted, I mean, I think that says a lot about the program and the how seriously they are taking recruiting as a whole. I'll be interested to see what they do with the St. Louis, Missouri area. I know that at the end of January Matt Rule was up there taking a visit to see. Let me see if I can pull up his name real quick. I believe it was um, Wingo. Let's see. Um, Ryan Wingo was his name, and he is the third overall wide receiver in the 2024 class and the top player from the state of Missouri. Wingo has 38 offers on the table, so he's getting a bunch of national attention, and it's just stuff like that. If we miss out on Hampton, maybe we have a shot at Wingo. Who knows? It's just nice to have options and have a coaching staff that takes recruiting so seriously.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I like about the way that this staff works too is there's a very firm plan in place. I feel like that they have just a very solid recruiting strategy of where they're going to go and what they're going to do, and everything's deliberate. Matt Rule doesn't do anything just to do it. Doesn't do anything by chance. He's very deliberate about what he's doing. Every post on social media, every visit, every coach he's calling, but he's also just, I mean, a freaking workhorse. I mean, this guy is building relationships with Nebraska high school coaches. He's doing clinics. I mean, these are the kinds of things that just, Scott Frost was just frankly too lazy to do. He was too lazy to do the little things that you need to do to win. And that's the difference between an elite head coach and a guy that sucks. I mean, really, it really is the truth.
You're
And
right.
I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, I'm sure that Scott Frost is going to learn that lesson, and I'm sure he'll be a better head coach for it if he ever gets that opportunity. But Matt Rule, this is why when Trev Alberts said he wanted to hire a proven head coach, this is why, because Matt Rule, the day he got, the second after that press conference got over, he's been working and he hasn't stopped.
And his staff too, Ed Foley. I don't know how Ed Foley sleeps, but he's all over the place. He's been pretty much around the entire state of Nebraska. EJ Barthel, I mean, you know, this coaching staff just works incredibly hard. And, I think it's a testament to, you heard him in his press conference, we're not going to sleep until this thing is done. And I admit, I liked how it sounded, but I wondered if it was lip service. It's not lip service. They're not sleeping. They're working hard. And, I'm curious to see what they can do, especially in 2024 with a full year under their belt. Now, we haven't seen anything on the field yet, but I like that we're able to do all this without any games being played on the field as of now.
Yeah, and a recruit I wanted to bring up just while we're on this topic that I think Nebraska at wide receiver has a good chance to possibly get Gatlin Bayer out of Idaho. I don't know if you've read about this kid much, but Michigan in the last couple cycles has gone into Idaho, and there's some really good players in the state of Idaho. Colson Loveland, is a tight end that they got who's kind of turned on at the end of the season, and it's a guy that looks like a future NFL prospect. Well, this kid is ranked in the top 200 overall. Baird, he's got his 100-meter times 10.53 and 10.56. So you can see, and he's 6'2", 180 pounds. And if you look at his 24/7 profile, it's Michigan and Nebraska are the two ones that are like the warmest. He said Nebraska's giving him as much attention as anybody. So I think that's really smart because, look, Nebraska geographically is closer to Idaho than Michigan is. So I mean, why wouldn't Nebraska make more of a presence there? Michigan's gotten a couple. They got the top ranked player there in 2021, or I mean in 2022. They nearly got him in 2023 as well. They just missed on him, and so I think that there's definitely some good players to be had there, and I think it's really smart to see Nebraska make a move for this kid because, I mean, look, he's just a prototypical Matt Rule recruit, and he's ranked 176 overall. So, I mean, sign me up for Gatlin Bear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talk about recruiting strategies and, the staff having a plan. They want speed, they want tall receivers, they want playmakers who can make plays down the field. Bear is a four-star recruit and is rated, 90 in terms of an overall numerical rating. Um, his offer sheet includes, like you said, Michigan, then Colorado, Nebraska, Oregon, Texas, and Texas A&M. And I believe Bear is going to make several visits this spring. He said, quote, "I'd say the schools recruiting me the hardest are probably Boise State, Utah, BYU, Nebraska, and Michigan." He then said, quote, I'll for sure take some visits in spring. I'll probably for sure go check out Michigan and Nebraska, and then maybe like Oregon or Colorado, but we will see with track. And with that speed, I understand why he runs track. So I'm curious to see how he kind of, emerges in this class as well.
Yeah, to me, reading that, and that's, yeah, I read that earlier this morning too. But this is a very, very winnable recruitment right
Mm,
now. The fact that he's taking visits to, Michigan, Nebraska, and Colorado and Oregon's, because Oregon's always the big team out west. Outside of USC, they're the big team that gets kids to visit. They're like the Alabama of the West. So, the fact that he's not going to visit Oregon, or he didn't even mention Oregon or BYU at visits, I think that says a lot. In Colorado, obviously 5-star, they've landed some 5 stars with Coach Prime. They're gonna get a lot of those guys for visits. But yeah, I feel like Nebraska's gonna have a really great opportunity to get this kid. So, I feel good about that, and I like where they're going. They're not missing players, and it just makes so much sense to me. Like, so many of these types of kids have been seeded to like Oregon for so long, and I like that. Nebraska. I'm not saying it's because they saw Michigan do it. I'm sure they're reevaluating their own players, but it's like,
yeah.
no, man, why is that team from the Eastern Division taking,
Yeah.
recruiting this kid? So I think it's really smart, and that's Matt Rule to a T.
Absolutely. And, just really quickly before we wrap up here, I liked what I heard from Garrett McGuire and Bob Wager in their press conferences on Thursday. McGuire talked about building relationships, and so did Wager. And, I just think that was really important because I know a lot of flack has been given to McGuire, especially for his age, but I feel very confident in what he's been able to do. I mean, his father was a football coach at Texas Tech, I believe. And, I really do think he could be that type of coach where he's an up and comer on the staff and then maybe leaves down the road for a bigger position. But just to hear him talk about relationships and, building and getting to know, the players' parents and making sure they do their homework and things like that. I mean, I was kind of hesitant on the McGuire hire initially, but after hearing him speak a couple times, I am really starting to come around on it.
Yeah, I've been all in on that hire from the start. Basically, I really like McGuire. I think he's going to be a future head coach. I think he's going to be a superstar on the recruiting trail, and I think everybody that has doubted him or that made fun of his age is going to feel real stupid in about a year or two.
Yeah, and I think Wager, he also talked about building relationships. So I think that kind of lines up well with the staff's, goal to make this more than football, kind of make sure kids get in the best position to succeed and have a coaching staff that actually cares about the kids. I think that's going to be huge, and quite honestly, I think that's something that is showing up in the recruiting trail as well.
Yeah, recruiting is a relationship business. It always has been, it always will be. NIL has, made a bigger impact, but, having those relationships with coaches and being able to build them with players and players' families, that stuff still matters. And Nebraska's proven so far under Matt Rule that it knows how to do that. And that's a really good thing going forward.
Absolutely, and I think, guys like McGuire and guys like Wager and McGuire especially, I think we might see him down the road in some bigger capacity, and I think Nebraska is a good stepping stone for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do, especially with that kind of, bond with a young group of wide receivers and a coach in McGuire who's just learning to find his way himself.
Yep, I definitely agree with all that. And on that note, folks, we will wrap it up here. So you see the message there on the screen. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button. I know it's kind of annoying, but go in and hit the like button on these videos. Comment. We really appreciate your comments, and we do want to hear from you as fans. If you have any other topics that you'd want us to discuss, it is a little bit slower in the off season. So if you got any other ideas, we're going to have some mailbags, and we'll start getting into this depth chart. Having some conversations about who's going to start where and who's going to do what during the spring. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit that like, and get into the comment section. And we'll be back for another episode later on this week. So make sure you check out HuskerBigRed.com and thegreatcornholio.org. You see our Twitter handles there on the bottom of the screen. So give us a follow there too. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.